So I just got back from the Camino de Santiago in Spain, which is a 500-mile walking trail. I did the Camino Frances. You walk from Saint Jean Pied de Port to Santiago. And I just wanted to talk briefly about my experience, if it's helpful to anyone else. I hope it inspires you to go on it if you're thinking about doing it. So I only made it about 310 miles. I didn't make it all the way to Santiago. I had to come back for a friend's wedding. So I made it to Astorga. It was about two-thirds of the way, but it was enough. I made it 26 days, and I actually hope to be back to finish it very soon. But just in that short amount of time, my experience was one of the coolest, best things I've ever done. There's so many elements that make it great. You meet people from all over the world, which is one of the coolest things. If you're going to do it, I recommend going solo because I think it kind of forces you to meet people more. I met some girls that had done it together, and they were kind of like at times kind of bickering, trying to figure out, what they're going to book. Like one wanted to stay in the albergs, the other wanted to book Airbnbs. And so if you have the opportunity to do it solo, I think it's actually better that way because you'll meet more people. You don't have someone you're attached to. All that to be said, if you do it with someone else, I think you can have a great experience as well. But just kind of that, it's a very personal experience. A lot of people that go on it, they're spiritual, they're religious. I'm a Christian myself. I think that adds to the experience because I was able to see God in a lot of just the daily encounters, the coincidences, the things that happened. I could go into a lot of different stories about it, but I think if you have some element of that, it's actually better if you think about that kind of thing, like spirituality, anything like that. I met some Australians. They had an incredible trip too. But I talked to them at one point and they seemed a little out of sorts maybe because they really had no religious background whatsoever. And then a lot of people on it are doing it for some kind of spiritual reason. So to me, I think that adds to the trip. And even if you're not religious at all, I think like if you can think about the spiritual side or of something greater, something bigger out there, some kind of the mystery of it all, I think that will add to your experience if you're open to that kind of thing. Because I think it's easy to kind of just get caught up in just the drinking. There's some partying that goes on, and if you don't kind of prioritize the spiritual element of it, I think it will make your experience a lot better if you do. So that's something I recommend. If you're young like me too, a lot of people don't have religious background. They don't have a faith of any kind that go on it. Maybe they're open to something like that. And I just encourage anyone thinking of going on it, especially if you're younger, to consider that. There are some people that say, you're not a true pilgrim if you don't do certain this or that. And I think that's BS. If you can do the Camino however you want to do it. You'll read and listen to a lot of YouTubes about different people's different perspectives about the Camino, what it is, like how you have to do it. And I think like if you're gonna, it's the thing. A lot of people say it's your Camino. You do it however you want to do it. It's not. There's not a guideline. There's not. There are recommendations for different cities to stay in, and people will get they in the very beginning they give you a booklet that says this is the cities you're supposed to stop in, and this is the distances between the towns. And some people take that and they think, oh, this is where I need to stop, like because this is what the guide says. But no, like there's albergs along the way. Actually, I highly recommend getting off kind of the main cities and staying in different cities. Mix it up because I think it'll add to your experience, and you don't want it to be too structured and too rigid. Some people, I met some Californians, mostly the older crowd, they love to book everything in advance. Some people will book you know they'll book the whole thing almost every single day. They know exactly where they're going, where they're staying. And to me, that takes away the mystery of it. You want to, if you can make it more loose and you can just kind of embrace the adventure and the unknown of it, because that's the history of the Camino. It wasn't all planned out and structured. There was, more of the unknown. So to me, that was some of my best experiences. I had a lot of people say to me, because I tried not to book albergs, and people were like, that's crazy. I wouldn't book. There were times I went over a week and I never booked a single alberg in advance. And I didn't even really wake up early either. You know, there are times I didn't get into a city at until 4 or 5 o'clock. And I still found something, you know, and also that was some of the coolest experiences I had when I didn't like there was a time I didn't I got into Pamplona maybe after 2 o'clock and I couldn't find anything. I also didn't have cell phone service at all. I only used Wi-Fi for service because I wanted to disconnect. I also recommend if you're able to do that, you know, I think it's worth it because I didn't want to be on my phone. I didn't want to have that distraction. You know, had music I'd listen to sometimes, but I didn't want to be getting texts and emails and calls from people when I'm kind of focusing on myself on this inner journey and the people and the surroundings and the nature and just being present in all of it. So, um, yeah, if you can, the more you can disconnect, the better, in my opinion. You know, and I think some people are pretty uncomfortable with that. That's fine. You know, you gotta again, you gotta do the Camino how you want to do it. If you want to book everything out in advance, and that's what you need to do to like get yourself to do it, then I think you know you should still do that, and you should still go on the Camino because it's still worth it. But I would encourage anyone listening to this to find your own comfort zone, right? Know your comfort zone and know and try and push yourself a little outside of that. Not so that you're like, freaking out and super uncomfortable because the big thing about the Camino is you want to enjoy it. You want to, this is your pilgrimage, right? Your time off. And you want to, if you're not enjoying it and you don't have a good time, then, what are you there for really? I mean, that's a big part of it. But at the same time, I think another really important element is like there is that challenge that a bit of suffering even. You want to push yourself personally, physically, um, out of your comfort zone. Embrace the mystery of it a bit. See if you can go like a day maybe in a smaller, to a less populous city maybe, and not book anything, and maybe wake up early and just see where you end up. Because some of the coolest things would be I'd be walking and I'd be like, yeah, I don't really know if I want to stay in this city. I think I want to keep going. Or maybe I'd get into a city and be like, okay, like this is cool. Hey, I know someone over here, this alberg. Okay, I'm gonna stay here, and you just meet people, and it's magical almost because everyone is so open. That's one of the coolest things. It's so easy to talk to people, and if you have to be sometimes just willing to engage a little bit if you kind of have that skill, because it can be an acquired skill, a little uncomfortable to talk to people if you're not used to meeting strangers. But for the most part, like 99% of the people you go up and talk to are in a friendly way, or everyone's kind of in the journey together. So it's very cool, and I loved just the international element of it. How there's just people from literally all over the world. Africa was the only continent that I found was not really that represented. I met one woman from like Namibia, I think, maybe South Africa, but I mean, tons of Asians, Europeans, of course, French, German, a lot of Scandinavians, some Eastern Europeans, a lot of Canadians. I'm American. I met some Latin Americans, just all over, a lot of Australians, South Koreans, particularly. So, I tried to talk to as many people as I could because I like meeting different people, and you meet some really interesting, diverse too. I met a wide range of people with different backgrounds, beliefs, politically, religiously, just life experiences. Just you get everything. So, and that's what's cool about it. So that's it's special. And the thing on the Frances too that I was on, there's so many people that I'm kind of sociable when I'm on these things, but there were times when I just kept meeting people that I had to be very intentional and purposeful about getting my own private time. I met some two girls that I walked with for like maybe a week or so, and I just I realized I was walking with them every day, and then I just realized I wanted to walk by myself for a day, and there were, and kind of keep going on and meeting new people. I met, there are days I'd meet people on the trail, and then, but I was intending to walk alone, and a couple times I said, I would just prefer, it's nice to meet you. I kind of just want to walk alone right now, and, not to be rude, and, it's fine. And if people have a problem with that, that's on them. But it's your Camino. Do whatever you want to do. If you want to talk to people 24/7, you can find someone to talk to. If you want to not talk to anyone and just like walk alone with your own thoughts and just in the nature, and or listen to music, or whatever you want to do, like, you can do that too. People will, they'll respect you. It's just common decency. So yeah, that was some of the coolest things about it. You know, the walking, yeah, it's challenging. I think if you're in decent shape, your body will adjust. I'm 32 years old. I'm in pretty good shape myself. I didn't train a lot for it. I did, some maybe like 10-mile hikes, not that much. And then, my body adjusted. So, you got to watch out for your feet. You'll hear that, of course. You got to protect your feet. Watch out for blisters. For me, if I started getting any kind of irritation, I started to feel something just in the very beginning forming, I would take immediate steps to address it, because I, I didn't want to get terrible blisters and then, screw up, have to go a couple days without walking, or just having to deal with that. It's easier if you're proactive about it. You can get Compeed, moleskin. I brought some moleskin over. I bought some Compeed when I was there, and I had a couple blisters that started to form in the beginning. I addressed them, and then it was fine. Like, I never really had any actual real blisters, because I kind of got it on the beginning. So, in that beginning stage, your body's adjusting, and you will adjust, and you'll get used to it. One thing I think is, like, for me, you don't want to. It's not a race, right? Some people, I think there's a mentality, more so maybe amongst Americans, but everyone, a lot of people in general, it's just, it's a race, and it's how fast can I do it? How quickly can I get from one town to the next? And that's fine if that's what you want to do. But I would encourage people, like, stop and smell the roses, right? Take your time, enjoy it, push yourself physically, but, like, it's not there's no need to feel like you have to finish it in a certain amount of time. Of course, some people don't have the luxury, are on a tighter deadline, but even if that's the case, like, I don't think, if you need to skip a day and take a bus a day, if that's what you got to do, like, it's not, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't feel like, don't let your pride get too in the way of, certain things. That being said, if you can walk every day, and if you're able to do it, your body allows you, if you can wear your backpack, that's, I would encourage people to do that as well. You've got to be mindful of the stuff you bring in your pack, bring as little as possible. I used just about everything I had except for the first aid stuff. So, the biggest thing I did research on beforehand was just figure out what you want to bring, right? Figure out what you want in your pack, and then really you don't have to book much of anything. The only thing, and I found another person that recommended this, the only thing that I booked in the beginning was Orson, and then St. John, and that's it, because I just kind of figured everything else out as I went. There were times I'd book ahead, but about, it was about half and half. Maybe I'd book the night before sometimes, or I would just not book anything. So, you'll figure that out as you go. So yeah, if you can, I recommend also, I found another YouTuber online that beforehand that recommends staying in Orson, and that worked out fantastic, because I met a lot of people at Orson that I saw throughout the rest of my Camino, which was very cool, because they do this kind of welcoming dinner. everyone is more open and willing to meet people, and the Pyrenees are just stunning. It makes your first day easier. It's just, you get into Roncesvalles the next day. You get in early. You beat the crowd coming from St. John the previous day. So yeah, stay in Orison. Book that. You probably have to book that in advance, and then you'll figure out the rest as you go. Another thing too, don't skip the Meseta. That's another great piece of recommendation. That it's kind of, to me, I had the best personal experiences on the Meseta, because it's more dry, it's more desert-like. I think it's Meseta. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but anyway, I had some of the best experiences there. To me, it was a little more emotional at times, and I think it's not uncommon to see people crying like on the Camino. Like there were times, like there were days where it's just like, it's such a personal thing at times, and when you're in the Meseta, you're kind of like, you're in the middle of the Camino, you're like kind of thinking like, what am I doing? The nature is not as interesting. It starts to be like, you're in this routine, and you're just starting to get out of this rhythm of normal life where it's just, I don't know, it starts to feel like you're almost like in a different world or something like that. I don't know how to really describe it, but I had some special experiences in a city where it was, just it was one of the little monasteries by nuns, and there were like 4 nuns playing music in a garden, and for some reason we were just reading different poems and songs, and I had just a really personal experience there. And that's another thing too, like I would say, like try and stay in as many different types of albergs as you can. Like get the full experience, definitely stay in a donativo, even if you're not religious at all. Like it's fine, but I think like the donativos are the ones you don't pay any money for. Parochial albergs, they're donation based, and I those were some of my favorite ones I stayed at, because they have a little thing like after dinner where you can, sometimes you'll pass a candle around, you'll share a reflection, or maybe you say some prayers together, or sing some songs together. You read some prayers from other people that have left them from before, and this real strong communal feeling. I tried to do as many of the communal dinners as I could, and that was great because it's just a great way to meet other pilgrims, and it's just such a great experience doing that. It's, if you have the money for it, the communal dinners, I highly recommend doing them if you can, as many as you can. Some of them work great, but most of them I had great experiences in. I think that's a lot of the main stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I think I mentioned I don't know if I mentioned, but I only made it to Astorga. It's about 2/3 of the way. It's actually the end of kind of it's split up into 3 sections. It's kind of the end of the mind heart section when you get in that last stretch before Santiago to where it's more of the soul section. So I enjoyed the, I was on it for 26 days. I took rest days in Pamplona, Burgos, and Lyon, just the big cities, because I wanted to explore them some more. And I definitely recommend taking some rest days if you can. It's good to just kind of break it up and, chill out for a day, even though really I was exploring the cities a lot and I didn't chill too much. I'm just wanting to do and see everything. So, visit a lot of the old churches too. Again, I think even if you're not religious, it's cool you can have special experiences in these places, like, that are, you can sense something, I think, even if you have no faith at all. And I recommend that to people. So, I had a great experience, several great experiences in really some of the smaller churches I thought were really cool. the old ones are magnificent as well. So I mean, a lot of the history too is I enjoyed learning about a lot. Just there's stuff with the Knights Templar, which is I think really cool. Just that history, and you just see all these really old buildings with this ancient statues of kings and the art, and these legends where King Alfonso got healed by the White Virgin, or things like that. I think here in the States we don't have this same kind of lore and legends and things like that, where miracles apparently happen to these people, and it's a cool. That's just cool in itself. Spain's a neat country. The food is good. I enjoyed the food. It's a lot of tapas. It's a lot of bread, a lot of jamon. I enjoyed the food closer to France, and then I didn't make it into Galicia, but I hear at the end near Santiago, the food's the best as well. Towards the middle of Spain, I had a few restaurants I thought were really good, but at times I thought, I was maybe wanting a little more flavor, and maybe it's just the places I went to. The food was, some of the tapas. It's just a lot of bread, a lot of tortillas. I got a little tired of the tortillas, but you know, I'm sure the Spanish food is still really good. I thought it was they had a lot of great options to choose from for like making your own food. So definitely I don't want to, insult the Spaniards and their food, but yeah, it's the French food I think is better, but it's still, the food is good. Yeah, it's all right. But anyway, yeah, I just had a great experience. I would recommend anyone to do it if you can. I've done a lot of hiking before, so I think it's good to train if you haven't done a lot, but just go slow, take your time, enjoy it, and enjoy the nature, enjoy meeting the different people. If all those things appeal to you, I think you'll enjoy it, and you're the right type of person to do it. So, yeah, if you have any comments, have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and I'd be happy to share more about my experience. I'm planning on going back at the end of probably sometime mid-July to finish it. I'm going to go back to Astorga, and I'm going to go all the way to Santiago. So, I'll make an update if I think of anything else, but highly recommend the Camino. And yeah, buen Camino, pilgrims.